welcome to SAG-AFTRA's President's Task Force on Education Outreach and Engagement webinar, Self-Tape Like a Pro with Arlene Schuster. This setup for today's presentation is introduction, presentation, followed by Q&A. So stay with us so that those questions that you've sent in can be answered at the end of the program and you can get all of the information that you need. Without any further delay, let me introduce today's host, SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris.
Hi, Pam. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well and that you're safe at home. You know, we are thinking of you, and it's important to note before we even start, we will get through this together. I believe that. You know, it's our creativity, our art, which has been comforting people across the nation. Our work has taken on a whole new meaning. And before we even move forward, I want to say I hope you're proud of the work you do. It's so meaningful. Before we get started, I also want to introduce our Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon, and our Secretary Treasurer, Cameron Manheim. Hello, ladies.
Hi, good morning. I'm very excited.
So excited to have you guys here. They are really, I just have to say this in front of everybody, a really crucial part of the great work that we're doing in the union, and I'm honored to work by your side. So thanks for being here. So I know we're all anxious to get back to work. It's something actually that's been coming up a lot from members around the country. I hear from you every day with questions about how it can be done safely, when will production start back up. Many of you have probably seen news articles already about production starting up in other countries, as well as some here in the United States. So it's important to know we're working on developing protocols for the safe return to work, and we're going to have those in the near future. So please stay tuned with us. Until those protocols are released, though, the union is taking calls from productions that wish to start now. The union is evaluating each production. So I want you to know that your safety is of paramount importance for all of our members. And so we are making sure to consider that safety as we develop the protocols and guidelines that will allow us to re-enter the workforce. There's so much that is unknown about the virus, and we're taking this to account as we work with others in the industry to devise those recommendations that will allow us to resume work while doing the utmost to ensure, again, your safety and mitigate the risk of exposure to the coronavirus. So watch your mailbox for updated communications about safety and a return to work. If you have any questions about this or other topics, know that you can email us at PTEOE@SAGAFTRA.org. That's PTEOE@SAGAFTRA.org. Now, as always, I am very proud to bring these important seminars and workshops to you. And while the pandemic shut down nearly all production, SAG-AFTRA's courageous broadcasters have actually continued to work, bringing us and the world important information and news, and I want to thank them for that. There's also been work continuing through new shooting techniques and in-home studios, mostly voiceover audiobooks, animation. There's some commercials and video games, and more production is going to be starting up soon. So there is no better time to host this seminar and our special guest. The pandemic has changed the way casting is done, at least for now. And today's guest is going to tell us about some of those changes and give us a great insider tips on how to navigate the new way of casting as we continue to showcase our talents. So with that, I want to introduce our presenter, Casting Director Arlene Schuster. Arlene is the founder of ASG Casting, Inc. It's a full-service casting company for commercials, television, web-based, and new media content. She studied at NYU and has more than 2,000 credits to her name. And after graduating NYU, she worked with Delilah Films, a female-owned music books and rock documentary company. She also worked production in New York before moving to LA and launching her own business. At ASG, she started a teaching collective with her business partner called Camera Right, Stage Left, very clever. And she continues to mentor actors and those wishing to become casting directors. From lighting and sound to framing the perfect shot to insider tips and what casting directors are looking for, Arlene's going to walk us step by step through everything we need to know to self-tape like a pro. We need you, Arlene. Friends, please welcome Arlene Schuster. Thank you, Arlene, for being here.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Wow, that sounded amazing.
Yeah, Gary, you sound so, you didn't even know how great you sounded. I
Yeah,
have
I
to
was
say,
like, oh yeah, right, I did do that.
members are very excited about what you're going to be presenting today. We actually do need you more now than ever before because the nature of our work feels different, and we know it's not going to be that, it's a new normal for us right now, and we need that guidance. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. And yeah, it's a new normal for all of us. And it was nice to hear you talking about the safety of actors, as well as I know the whole industry is working on making sure that we all stay safe. And I'm really happy to be doing this because I know there's a lot of confusion and concern between shooting in your home and doing an audition self-tape, which are two entirely different birds they're entirely different, however that saying goes. So I'd love to start with the presentation of how to work on doing a successful self-tape. And we will start our presentation here. I'm a little nervous, everyone, not being an actor. It takes me a couple minutes to kind of calm down here. If I go too fast at the end, we'll be doing questions. So please feel free to, as Gabrielle said, I think questions are coming in later. So anyway, today on the agenda, we will cover your home studio, the video quality of that self-tape, your performance, and then your submission. And these are the four areas that you have to be concerned about. Again, this is an audition tape, and the silver lining of this, I always like to try and find the silver linings. You are for the first time seeing in your self-tapes what our clients and what we see in the studio, what we're looking at through our monitors. You have the same view we have. So really, you actually have the ability to do a better audition now than you do in the room. You can't walk away and say, oh, I could have done a better job. You have the opportunity to do a better job at home and do it as many times as you need to. So we'll go ahead and start the next frame, which I kind of just went over. Anyone can have a good studio at home, whether you're in a small studio apartment or a larger home. There are so many different ways that you can put your backdrop up. If you don't have a flat wall, we'll go through that further on in the presentation. There are just very specific, there's specific equipment or quality, I should say quality, that you have to make your home studio work. And that includes sound, performance, and lighting, mainly. But we'll go through more of that as we move on. You can change screens. This is the first time I've ever done a PowerPoint presentation live on Zoom. So thanks for being patient with me. Yeah. Okay, this is important to remember. If you're using your phone, try and use, you're going to want to try and get the best quality you can across the board. It doesn't mean going out and spending hundreds of dollars on equipment. It means making sure that you use the best quality of what you have. So if you're choosing to shoot with your phone, as we all know, selfies are not, the quality is not as good as if someone else is shooting you from the other side of the phone. So always make sure to shoot from the backside of the phone, and always use a tripod. Handheld is not going to be the best quality at all. There's too much shaking that takes place. And also an actor shouldn't feel like that's what they're focusing on. You should be focusing on the performance. So you want to try and make sure everything else is taken care of so you can have the best performance possible. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll go ahead and talk about a backdrop. Again, there are so many different types, and in today's climate, none of us have paychecks coming in. So the last thing we want to do is spend a lot of money on our home studios. And for that reason, you can use anything from a blank wall to a sheet, make sure it's ironed if you're using it, to a seamless if you happen to have that much space, or a collapsible backdrop. If you want to invest a little bit of money, I know for under $50, you can get a collapsible backdrop. I'm not going to promote any particular brands or specific, you need to get this backdrop, you need to get this camera, you need to get these lights, this microphone, because for everybody it's different. Everybody's scenario is different. So I'm going to be very general, and then you need to figure out what works for yourself. If you are going to do an ironed sheet, please make sure, actually, if you're going to do anything, it's best if it's not stark white. Remember, whatever your skin tone is, you don't want to either blend in, or if you have a darker skin tone and it's a white backdrop, it's going to blow you out. So just be very aware, just like you should be aware of the wardrobe that you're wearing when you go into the studio. Same situation with this. You should be aware of what colors you're wearing, is anything vibrating. We'll get into that in a little bit. But regarding the backdrop, very important to, what usually works best, and you'll notice in most studios that you go to, is a gray-blue backdrop. Tends to work best for everybody's skin tones, and that's why most of us use that color. Excuse me. I also want to, as a general note, say that my area of expertise is commercial casting. However, we have done theatrical casting over the years. What I'm telling you is for all self-tapes. It's general for all self-tapes as far as the quality goes, as far as the equipment that you'll need, the process of making a self-tape. What will differ is the actual framing. Sometimes differs from theatrical to commercial. And again, I'll get a little bit more into that later and possibly into the questions after. Next screen, please. Okay, lighting. Don't overcomplicate. Definitely don't overcomplicate. If you are great at lighting, fantastic. People's expectations today are a little bit different, as we all have. I mean, I'm sure you can see it in my glasses. I have a little ring light, $30 ring light that I bought because I started to do lives on Instagram, and I thought, oh my God, I have to be like the actors. I need to look good. I feel for you guys so much. I've really learned a lot from your perspective, but you potentially may see the light, especially in people who wear glasses. It's going to be hard to get away from that. I know when I watch the morning shows, when I watch the Today Show or any news programs, I see the ring light in everybody's eyes. It's the state of today. It'll be the COVID style. We'll look back at it in 10 years and say, oh, look at the COVID style. Thank God we're not going through that anymore. But for today, it's absolutely fine. And again, there are so many different ring lights that you can get. As I said, a $30 one on up to hundreds of dollars. I actually, thinking about doing this Zoom, I thought, maybe I should invest in a better ring light for this seminar. And one arrived the other day. It's much larger, and a friend of mine had used it and said, oh, this works great for me. And I tried it, and it was horrible for me. It was the reflection in my glasses. It was overwhelming. The light was overwhelming. So again, for me, I found that this worked. So I think you just have to try out what works for yourself and make sure that it's returnable. Windows are your friend. Okay, windows can be your friend. If it's strong, direct light, it does not look great. What you want to do with your lighting is make sure that it's flat, not that it doesn't have strong, I don't want to say flat in that you can't see any differentiation, but you don't want to have strong lighting. At this point, what the directors are looking for is obviously your performance, and you don't want to be swayed by that performance. They're not looking for you to be the lighting director and throw, intense dramatic light on yourself, unless the casting director says for you to do that, which I doubt they will in a first self-tape. So really it's about everything in the screen, in the frame, not taking away attention from you and your performance. That's the goal and purpose of an audition, right? We don't want, props are great, and we'll go over that, but we don't want anything to take away. Again, getting back to the vibrant shirt. I don't want to be looking at the shirt and saying, gosh, I wonder where she got it. I want to be listening to her performance. So yes, and mind the shadows, which I just said. Next screen, please. Okay, microphones. I was talking with some of my colleagues about this and other actors, and the sound needs to be good quality. If it's not good quality, we can't hear the performance. So unfortunately, with all the self-tapes we get, if the quality, again, on your picture and your sound is not good, it's very easy to pass by a self-tape. And it's easy enough to make those things work. So I think that it also shows, subconsciously, it shows the director, it certainly shows the casting director, that you care enough about your performance and about your work and your work ethic when you get on set, that you are willing to go the extra mile and make sure that, simple, but that your tape looks good and is watchable, basically. You can, yeah, so I can get more into that at the end. One thing that really helps is a lavalier mic, especially if you're living with a lot of other people or there's a lot of street noise, construction going on, gardeners, whatever the situation is. Lavaliers help. It's okay if we see it. It's okay if we don't see it either, whichever works for you. It's just about getting the sound quality up. If you have other sources for the sound, if it's just collecting it from your phone and that sounds good, great. Again, you record, you listen to your recording, what worked, what didn't work. Oh, you forgot you had turned the washing machine on and the dishwasher, and so you better not record during that time period. The kid next door in your apartment is rehearsing his piano lessons. So think about all of these things when you are recording. And again, if the recording doesn't work, you can go back and do it again. Readers. Okay, there were a lot of questions about this, and I've had questions in the past on the lives regarding this. There are so many different ways to do readers, and we'll get more into this during the question and answer period with Gabrielle. But with the sound, the audio of a reader, most important that it is much quieter than you are. That we don't care how the reader sounds. If you can, think about it when you're in the studio, who is the reader with you? Usually on a commercial audition, it's the camera operator, the session runner. They're not always actors, and they're certainly not reading it to you. They're not giving you a great read. The point is for you to be able to have some sort of beat so that you can do your part. But again, the important thing with this is making sure that your voice is louder than the reader's. So if you're recording from your computer or your phone, and that's where your reader is coming through, you're going to have to adjust things. We'll talk more about that later on. We can go to the next page. Excuse me. Yes, so I've said this, the quality of your video is your first impression. It is the impression that immediately you don't have to worry about, the director isn't taking, or the ad agency creatives aren't taking that extra moment of, oh, I don't know, maybe they'll be easy to work with. We know right away that stuff they can be calm, because remember, this is new for them, especially if we continue to do this remote production during this time period. They're going to have, and with safety measures, they are going to have very strict rules as to how many people can be on set, how we do the callbacks. At this point, there are no film permits being given, I don't believe, in Los Angeles. So you have to do remote commercials in the actor's home. So for them, for their anxiety level to go down and say, okay, I know I've got it covered with my actor. He can act, he or she can act. I've got a union gig going on. I'm not going to be concerned about that. I feel like with everything they've sent that they're confident and they can understand the directions I'm going to give them on the shoot day, should they be booked, with any equipment we might send. So I feel really good about that. And I feel like in an audition, that is where the director feels that confidence. So you can give him that in your self-tape by making sure that that everything is of good quality. So again, you're sending him a good first impression. Next, please, thank you. Yes, and we went over this hand holding, just, it's too shaky. I don't think that's really the way to go on a self-tape. Now, if a casting director has given you directions to go around, this is after your audition. In the self-tape submission, they want you to do the audition, which is usually two takes. Then they also want you to include video of your location, maybe of other people that live in your home, and maybe of the equipment that you have, should they choose to use that if and when they book you for the job. That's all they're doing. They're kind of taking inventory so that they know once they see your audition and they like you, they can watch the rest of the self-tape with the other information that they've requested. And we can talk more about that afterwards with Gabrielle with the questions, because a lot of questions came in with that. That's one of those areas that's super confusing. And I think they've done it enough times. Productions have done it enough times that they're sort of getting a routine or an idea. And also some actors have already shot, so they're able to give us feedback of what their experience was. So, okay, the next screen. Yes, and this is what we were talking about earlier, the framing. What you see in your Zoom frame is what our clients usually see. So whether it's a self-tape or a Zoom session, that's all they ever know of you. They're not, even in callbacks in the room for commercials, most of the time they are looking at the monitor because that's their view. That's what they're going to see on screen. So really, I hope people can shift their fears of this time period to actually an asset and a great time to be working out and getting better at your craft, even for your own, even for yourself. You know, I've often given little self-challenges on my lives of do a self-challenge, do a self-tape every day. And it's only for you, it's not going anywhere, but one, it keeps you supple, so as if you've been going out on auditions, and two, it will definitely make you do a better self-tape. It's similar to athletes and, you know, exercising. If you don't continue to exercise your craft, you will get stiff and you'll have a really hard time when we actually do go back to the room and feeling really confident and comfortable because we've been out for so long. So I challenge all of you to a self-tape personal challenge for yourself for 30 days. Do a self-tape every day and see how much you learned at the end of the 30 days. Next, please. Thank you. Let's see. So this is important. The video quality is very important. And we're going to talk about framing because that's where it will differ from casting director to casting director. Always, no matter what I say, no matter what anyone else says, follow the directions of the casting director that sent you the audition. They have very specific rules. For instance, let's say I had 2 jobs that I was doing and they're for 2 different directors and I have to do self-tapes and, you know, we're going through the whole COVID process. I might give you 2 entirely different directions. Why? Because my directors or my agency have asked for the auditions to be in a very particular style. And I'm not talking about just the blocking and the direction that we want you to do. I'm talking about slating in the front end, in the back end, 2 takes, 1 take this way, 1 take that way, and that would be in direction. But phone being horizontal. Maybe for some reason, another director doesn't like them horizontal. He wants them vertical. Or I'm just giving examples of what could happen. However, in the general scheme, most of the time for commercial auditions, we will want to see you from pretty much where I am, from the waist up with a little bit of headroom. And that is so we can see movement, hand movement, gestures. Remember, advertising is about quickly engaging with the actor on screen. And that's often with the prop. You know, if you have a phone, you need to be able to see it up here. If you have glass, you need to see it up here. Never like this, always like this. And these are things that, and if you had a table that you were working off, if I was setting something on a table, I would want to set it down here so my product could be right there. So that is why we have the framing that pretty much, again, goes from waist a little bit higher than head. In theatrical, usually it's much tighter. And that is because they want to see you and they want to get to know you. There's a different outcome that we're looking for in those kinds of auditions versus commercial auditions. So that's very, very important. If I only saw from here up for a commercial, unless I was told by the casting director, if I was doing a job that was completely headshots and it was person by person by person, that's what the commercial was going to be. There were going to be 20 people in the commercial, and it was something about eyewear, as an example. Sure, then the casting director might say, do a nice extreme tight so we can see all the facial features. But again, that's very specific to that product. I'm talking very in general here. Usually do the phone horizontally. It is the right dimensions. Practice your blocking ahead of time, absolutely important. And pay attention to your props, which I just went over. All right, great. We can move on to the next screen. Can we move on? Yeah, thank you. And I just said this, and I'll repeat it again. Always, always follow the casting director's directions. This is in studio as well. We've all seen these changes over time. We have so little time to see people. And now this is part of the casting director's challenge of figuring out how, once we return to the studio, how many people are we going to be able to see? And it's very clear our days are going to be cut in half, if not more than that. We have a sign for any of you that have been to ASG Casting or Southpaw Studios here in LA. We have a sign, I'm not sure if it's going to read properly forward or not. little sign right here. And we love this sign. Our associate made it about, I don't know, 8 years ago. And basically what it says is when you get an audition, and this was for in-studio auditions, pre-COVID, when you get an audition, you are one of 36 actors chosen for your role that day. Just so you know, you were selected from a pool of 600 to 3,000 submissions in your pool alone. And we've narrowed that down to 36 people. So for us, how do you book the job is what the sign says: be prepared, be on time, and be professional. And don't take it for granted. And that's the same situation with these self-tapes. It's the same thing, it's a different format, that's all. I mean, I can tell you this is very strange for me. I prefer being at SAG-AFTRA offices in front of a lovely group of people and having that feedback. It's strange, it's different, but we'll all get through it. We always do. We've seen plenty of changes over the years, and this is just, you know, a little change we need to make. I will say that self-tapes will become part of the norm. And for how long, I don't know. It doesn't matter. They've been, theatrically, they've been part of the norm for ages. So it's a good thing for you guys to know how to do it and master it and feel comfortable anyway. But the reason I'm talking about all of this on this card is because you always need to follow the casting director's directions. And in the studio, there have been many people who come in and they just don't listen to us. They don't watch, they don't look at the copy the night before. They are relying on the cue card, which is always there. But I can tell you the audition of the person reading the cue card because they've never looked at the copy versus the person who uses the cue card as a tool for them will not get the job. It's a complete disengagement. And these self-tapes show you that disengagement. When you make your self-tape, you will understand right away why a certain performance gets a callback and the other one doesn't, and what performance potentially can book the job. So really keep that in mind. You know, chances are all of you watching this are, you know, really good actors who have gone in, either you just got your SAG-AFTRA card or you've had it for 40 years. Either way, you all can make good self-tapes and make them engaging. But you must listen to the casting director's information, her direction, his or her direction. So that if you walk away with anything, and in every decision you're making when you're making your self-tape, make sure you are keeping that in mind, because at the end, if after you send it, you haven't sent it the way that they wanted you to, you didn't shoot it the way they wanted you to, and then there was one thing, oh yeah, I didn't emphasize the name of the product the way they asked. Oh, I'm sure it's okay. I'll change it in callbacks. Not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. You have to listen to the directions. Okay, I'm ready for the next screen. Thank you. And this comes down to the performance I was just talking about. Do your homework. That's even, please, 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 when we go back into the studio, please do your homework. We will need to prove to our clients that we called in the best actors, those few best actors that we could call in, because they did their homework. You should always dress for the part. In your self-tape, also dress for the part. Well, I'm going to go back for a second on the homework. And it comes down to the product. Again, we're talking about advertising. Make sure that you look up how to pronounce the name of the product. What kind of advertising have they been doing? Do they tend to be a little, if it's comedy, is it quirky? Is it understated? Do your homework. Again, dress for the part. If they're calling for a nurse, wear something that feels like, you know, you may not have scrubs at home, and that's totally fine, but maybe you have a blue top, a button down, or a t-shirt, so that you can look the part of a nurse. Make sure you wear your hair the way a nurse would wear it. If you have a mask, that's a great prop to have on you these days. What's going to happen? This is something while we're at home, while we're in COVID land, to think about, and that is getting your own personal prop box and wardrobe together. You will, for instance, an example is a lab coat. Usually studios have lab coats that you can borrow. This would be a time, if those are the characters that you often play, that is what I would have in your wardrobe. I would make sure that you had t-shirts. If you're someone who would work at a fast food restaurant, fast food place, have red and blue, things for Coke, Pepsi, McDonald's, Burger King, Best Buy, Walmart, all those colors. You can, from Old Navy, you can order t-shirts that are in blue, gray, don't do white. I mean, you can do white, but it's not great for auditioning. Cream is okay. Think about the products, do your own inventory, and see what roles you think you would be booking and what products fall in that area. And go online and find out, what color does Best Buy use? What color does UPS use? Yeah, so make sure you have your wardrobe, and then make sure your hair is always done appropriate to the character. Are you an earthy yoga person, or are you playing an architect that day? So your hair is going to be maybe curly and, fantastic if you're a yoga, and if you're going to be an architect, it'll be pulled back and clean and edgy, or I don't want to say edgy looking, but contemporary looking. With the personal prop box, and this is super important, and there are classes out there that I would recommend you guys look into for commercials that talk about things like possibly more specific products for self-tapes, but also about specialty, how to really prepare for auditions in the upcoming over the summer and the rest of this year. I highly recommend you take them or educate yourself through this time period. For the prop box, get the props that you think you would normally use in a studio. For instance, a coffee cup. We're not sharing coffee cups anymore. We're not sharing, well, we never shared straws, but you want to have your own straws. I don't even know if the casting directors will have straws for you to take. We don't want people touching things. So make sure you have all of that. And another little thing I just want to throw in here, when we do start going back to the studios, make sure we are going to have very specific safety rules. And you will need to make sure that you have masks and gloves and your own personal sanitizer. Although we will have them, these are things that you should carry for your own benefit, as well as, of course, for everybody else that's working there and everyone else that's auditioning. And lastly on this page, do as many takes as it takes. I've mentioned it several times. One of the silver linings, for the first time you see what we see, and if you do a take and you don't like it, do it again. We often request 2 takes. And if you did 2 takes and you like both of them, but the second take was better, put that first on the self-tape, because we only really watch the second take if we liked the first one and we want to get a little bit more. I mean, often we watch the first one and we go, great, call back, that person's great. We never even watched the second one. But if, for instance, it's comedy and you've shifted it a little, or your emphasis was in a different place on the product name, if it was wall-to-wall copy, then we'll want to watch the second take. But it's always better to have the best one first, and do it as many times as you need to. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Yes, as I was just saying, use this time wisely. It's really, I would require yourselves to, spend an hour a day to educating yourself in your craft, and whatever that means. Again, getting together your prop and wardrobe, getting your studio a little bit more where you feel comfortable with it, so that if an audition comes in at the last moment, you know exactly where to put little pieces of tape down of where to put your lights if you have, or your tripod if you have several different lights and not just one ring light. Mark all your places, just like we do in the studio. It is more work, and it's a drag that it's more work for you. But I think we're all trying to figure out how to be successful and show that we will prevail and we can work no matter what. Next slide, please. Self-tape every single day. And the next one, please. It's kind of strange because I don't have them in front of me, so I don't have the order. Be ready for the call. We just talked about that. Great, and we can move on to the next slide. Okay. Okay, so for your submissions, slating's a funny one. Most theatrical tends to want you to have the slate at the end. Commercially, we tend to want the slate on the front end. That's what we do in the studio. So that's what our directors and our agencies are used to seeing. So I would say, unless the casting director tells you a specific way to do your slating, if they give you no direction, just be natural, have the slate on the front end of the self-tape, and it's their first impression of you. And this is just like it is in the room. So, you don't need to be overly friendly. It's professional. It's a job interview. These auditions are job interviews. Yeah, so just a really quick, hi, my name is, and that's it. Cut. Then you do your next 2 takes. So your self-tape should basically consist of a slate. Again, unless the casting director has told you differently, a slate, take 1 and take 2, and you're going to clip them all together. I've looked online, I was telling, again, on my lives, I was telling the actors and people watching, just do this. It's no big deal. And I was like, you know what? I've never made a self-tape. Maybe it is a big deal. So I decided I would do my own self-tape. And for me, what worked best, so that I didn't have to get into the rigmarole of QuickTime or any big programs, iMovie wasn't working for me. I ended up downloading an app, and there are several, and you can do it for free. And I just popped those 3 clips in, and voila, I had my first self-tape. And so I realized it was doable. I was actually able to put my name up on it, which was really nice and great for us, because it was another labeling technique that worked for the casting director. Is what happens for us. And I personally have not had a job yet during this period of time. However, many of my colleagues, not many, a few, okay, let me call it what it is. A few of my colleagues have had a job or 2 here and there. And we all, I'm a member of the CCDA, which is the Commercial Casting Directors Association. And we often get together and talk about the challenges that we are facing now and will be facing, just like how SAG-AFTRA does. And actually, we've had meetings with Lori Hunt and Beth Haynes and several other SAG-AFTRA employees that are helping us navigate through the commercial world. There's been really, really great feedback and conversations between the 2 organizations, which has been wonderful. But anyway, one of the things that some of the people have brought up is the amount, and we know that this is logical that it's going to happen, the amount of time it takes for us to now do this process. So I know that self-tapes are a drag for you guys. Our job is a drag for us too, but we just have to make our way through it. And one of the things that came up was redirection. And in some cases, the self-tape was sent. They really liked the person. It was not a good self-tape. It was not, it wasn't directed the right way. And I know that's hard. I mean, that happens to us all the time in first auditions. We, the casting directors, assume how we think the director and the creatives want the spot to be, but we've miscalculated it a little. The comedy isn't in the right place, or it's a workshop and they've realized whatever in our first auditions didn't work and we had to change it for callbacks. That's why callbacks change all the time. Well, it's in this particular case with first auditions, sometimes we really like somebody and we think they're perfect for the job, but we need them to be redirected before we can even send it to the callback. And so that was one issue, and that takes a lot of time for us to go through all of that. Another thing, hopefully I stayed on track with that. If I didn't, we can readdress that in callbacks. With that, the labeling is very important, because if you don't label it with your name, we or our assistants, we've got to put it all together on a link that will look exactly the same for our for our clients. So if it's going to take us extra time because we can't download it because it's too big, or something's not working, then we will just put that to the side and end up only looking at the ones that work. So just be aware of that, and try and practice. Maybe put it up on, whatever service you're using. There are a couple of different big services, and send it to, share it with a friend and see if they were able to view it properly and see if the labeling looks right. That's your homework. That's the homework you can do. You have the ability. You're not all alone in your apartment, even though it might just be you in your apartment. You have other people you can reach out to. It's like, what did they call it on the game show? Call your lifeline. So this is a great time to have a couple lifelines. Okay, great. Next slide, or next, yeah. So a couple of the submission companies that work well, that people have been using, are WeTransfer, Dropbox, G Drive. They all work, but it is very, very, very important that you turn off all the permissions, because sometimes we're going in through a different email address. So turn off the permissions. Do not require a password. Those are all extra steps that we have to do, and it makes our job one step difficult, which makes us a little, have a little bit of an anger towards that particular self-tape. Make sure that the link doesn't expire. And the reason for this is because what if we don't know when we're coming back to work. And so what if our client needs to look at it again? They want to be able to get to that link. And the other thing is, if you're shooting on your phone, send it directly from your phone, upload it from your phone. Do not send it to an email address and then send it to somewhere else, because I'm not a tech genius here, but it does get all kind of funky along the way. So next one. Oh, that's it. You guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope this was educational. And you're clearly putting your 2 hours in today of education towards your craft.
Arlene, first of all, thank you. I have to tell you, members are so excited. I said that earlier, but this has really been so illuminating. As you were speaking earlier on, and you said to get the ring light, I was like, oh my God, I got to get my ring light. So anyway, it was really helpful.
Okay.
Oh, pardon me?
Does it look okay?
Yeah, it looks great. You look good. It's the glass thing too. You're right.
The glass thing, it drives me nuts. Yeah.
I wanted to say I have several questions that have been coming in, so I'm going to give those to you. We also have some that came in earlier, but I first of all want to say thank you for the challenge. The idea of giving us something every day that we can do, for this 1 month to self-tape so we get better. Great advice, because it's true. We get better and better each day as we do it. And it helps us to exercise our craft. So thank you. You said something earlier that I just wanted you to share, if you don't mind. You said to me, I think before we had started, that a lot of the auditions you're seeing are union.
Yes. So as I mentioned a couple times, I started 9 weeks ago, I started an IG Live because, you can imagine for us, I'm going to get weepy. It's just as hard because we live with you guys all the time. You're in our facilities and you are our family. So I started, I can't believe I can never hold it together. So anyway, I started the Instagram Live and I was able to at least be able to speak with, through texting or whatever it is, with actors that were out there. And oh my God, I just forgot the question you asked me.
No, it's okay.
About the SAG thing. Yes. So I started having interviews with people 2 weeks ago, and two amazing talent agents, Rachel Fink Richardson from SPV Talent and Chaim Magnum from Lemon Lime Talent Agency. And when I spoke with Chaim last week, he said he had just booked a job. A couple of his talent were on it, and he mentioned in the live he was so excited because he's seeing far and few between jobs. That's an overall statement. Union, non-union, they're far and few between. But he was seeing that there were some decent union jobs, and he was excited because he felt like the directors or the ad agencies, the directors always want to work with union. The ad agencies and the clients didn't want to hassle working with non-union talent. To walk in and not have to worry about the performer knowing their craft was one thing less to have to worry about, because now with Today and remote shooting, they know, as I think I said in the presentation, there's a big difference between self-tapes and actually shooting in your house. And what he said is on the shoot that he had just booked, they were actually sending an entire kit. And, we've seen it on American Idol, and we've seen it on The Voice, that they're all sending kits, and then the actor has to spend a day working with production and figuring out how to set up everything. And so he mentioned and said that he was kind of excited because as an agent, he was watching a lot of union stuff that he felt was that it was going to be more on the union side of things, because it was one less thing for production to have to worry about. I thought that was great. Yes, yay.
Yeah. I just wanted everybody to hear that, because it makes, there's a lot of anxiety around the idea that, is it now just going to be all this non-union? And they don't realize how essential, a lot of our members aren't realizing now more than ever how essential they are in terms of being professional. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, now more than ever. And I really feel, I've been on a couple Zooms with ad agencies and production companies. And, I think, and I'm sure with what you've heard as well, come the fall, people are really going to want nice spots. They're going to want nice content for, television and film. They're going to want to see heartfelt, good performances that they can get engaged with. So knock on every piece of wood.
So I have actually a lot of questions here, and I know that we only have you for a short period of time, so you are amazing. I'm going to be asking questions that were sent in, and then I'm going to have, I know Rebecca has something from New York, Cameron has some other questions, so we're going to kind of go around. But the first question that I want to ask you is, since the days of the pandemic, we've really had to adapt some new skills if we hadn't already. Self-taping auditions like you just did. Some of the requirements have seemed extraordinary to myself and many of my contemporaries. Can you address this? Some requests state that you have to prove that whoever who is helping you tape your self-tape, which right there is a clue that they might want more than a self-tape. does in fact live with you and has since the quarantine began. So that's a question to the person who's taping you. I get it. No one wants to go, you to call in a pro who comes over to your house sweating with fever and popping pain and flu pills because they don't want you to get sick. But they went on to explain all the camera and lighting equipment and the various settings they want you to show off in your audition as well. Seems a bit extreme to many of us. Can you just ask that actors have a smart camera phone, a ring light, a backdrop, maybe a light to shine on the backdrop and then call it a day? Or are we going to have to jump through everyone's very specific hoops for each audition? Thank you for addressing this.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I talked about some of that, and I think it's very important to understand there is the audition, the self-tape is the audition, and there is the shoot itself. We're all trying to figure this out at the same time so we can all be working. And so it will go through so many different versions. Week by week, it's changing. Day by day, I'm sure it changes. It certainly did at the beginning. So for your self-tape, yes, absolutely. You can do a self-tape the way you always have, the way we've talked about today. If you are using a tripod, if there's not another, even if there's another person in the room, use a tripod. So it's stable, or your computer. And a reader can be done, in various different ways. What they're talking about, I feel like it's important. If that job is asking for a bunch of requirements, like the only people that can work on this job is if you have this equipment, that is not the job for you. It's okay. It's just, it's not the job for you. Right now, these are the requirements of that particular job, that ad agency. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. It's just, it's not yours. If you, are you saying who the people are that are sending it, or we're not worried about? Okay.
No, some people are putting down who they are.
Okay, great.
Sharing with them and not others.
Okay, great, good. So yeah, so so I would say, please do not stress out. To say, are they asking too much? No, they're not asking too much. They're asking what their requirements are. And that's the thing about every single job. If the reason things go non-union is because they don't want to follow the requirements of the union. They can't afford it. They want to do different, their labor. They don't want to follow the working conditions and labor laws, so that's why they choose non-union. In this particular case, the production is going, I don't know that job, but my assumption is if they were asking all that, one, they wanted to see if there was any or what they needed to send. If they were in a position where they couldn't send it because that's not what their budget allowed, they were trying to find people who maybe, such as people who have DPs or cinematographers in their home with them. At the beginning, that's what they were really trying to find, because they knew the equipment was there and they didn't know what the rules were regarding what if we send equipment and are there legal ramifications if, God forbid, there's, a COVID spit on it. I mean, I don't know, Gabrielle, because you deal with this all the time. There are so many different rules and regulations between OSHA and just safety. So,
we're also, go on.
No, I was going to say, go on.
No, we're also finding that actually some of them are asking for things that it's not necessarily because they don't have the money. They just are interested in that. And we've actually, as a union, said you could actually bargain beyond just what the audition is. And that's something that people have done successfully. We freely bargain those extra things. A lot of that sometimes comes from a different jurisdiction anyway. So we want to make sure to respect it. But you're right. Sometimes it's like you're saying, it's a money issue, but other times it's just because they're looking for a certain quality and we're recommending go for it. You can always bargain for it.
Exactly. And I will say, just like what you just said, at the way beginning when we were all talking, that was one of my questions. We're talking about the actors putting a lot more time in, a lot more responsibility in this whole process. And I feel like, the unions have really been on top of talking with everybody. And I also felt like you know, in private closed meetings, no one wants to take advantage, that they really do understand what everyone's challenges are. And and to keep that in mind, it's no one trying to use you. Yeah.
That's so good because, you know, people do, when you're isolated, you can get a little anxious.
Feels like it.
I
Yeah.
want to actually ask Rebecca, I know that you had a question in New York, so if you'd like to ask that question, that would be great.
Yeah, one of the questions, and it's definitely applicable to New Yorkers, but it's anybody that has a small or challenged space. If you're in a very small, and I know you know this from having been a New Yorker, in a small New York City apartment that's crowded, you don't have the blank walls, you might not even have the room for that three-quarter shot. Are there things or adjustments that you might make? Should you just, you know, somebody said to us, should we just wait until the pandemic is over, but they still want to participate, they're up in their game, they're doing all that. What do you suggest for folks that are in those kinds of situations?
Yeah, I would say no, don't wait for the pandemic to be over. They are not discounted, and we all love our little studio apartments in New York.
We do.
Many of them with very little space. So I think the best thing would be to use something like a sheet, you know, or something, and figure out a way to be able to either rig it with something coming down from the ceiling, or like a drape rod, depending on what the space is like. And figuring out, and this is again with the self-tape challenge, figuring out what corner or space in your apartment is usable. Is it, you know, if you have like if you have like a kitchenette, or if you have like a little closet kitchen, you know, maybe putting a drape up right there, and there's enough shooting space to get this much. It is what it is. We all know that we're having these challenges, but I understand because, you know, either the bed's in the shot, or the TV's in the shot, or, you know, the chair, whatever it is, see what you can use. But I would definitely say in that challenge, do it all your different angles and see what works.
Thank you for that. That's great. Cameron, you had a question.
Hi, I had a question. Thank you so much, Arlene. This has been great. About redirection. Since we don't have the benefit of coming in to your office now and getting kind of instantaneous redirection and doing a better take for you that the directors want and the producers want, is it possible for you to give more direction to us before we self-tape? Sometimes I just get sides and I don't really know the tone, the gist, what you want. And so then you're going to require us to do it again after we get a note. It would be so much better for us if we could just have some notes up front of what you're looking for, so we might be able to get it in our first time out.
Yeah, totally. That's the individual casting directors and the information that they're given. I know for the CCDA, we've talked about this and about being more specific with the direction. And so on the commercial end of things, we are trying very hard to get the two different sides of that it could be interpreted. Because yes, it can always be interpreted differently. For theatrical, you know, I actually don't know how much theatrical work is even going on right now as far as casting goes. But it might be something that would be good for the CSA to, you know, maybe I'll try and send an email off to people that I know that are in the CSA, and for them to address that, because it is, I know it's challenging for you guys. And so, yeah, but as far as commercials go, and I know that I saw a question that that someone had asked at some point about the misinterpretation from casting director to agent to actor, and how the agent will not send the self-tape if it is not exactly like off book, if it's not exactly the way they want it, so that we the casting directors won't even get the opportunity. And they were a little frustrated by that. I think that You know, I would say for commercials, if you find that you receive a breakdown that is not giving you the information that helps you be able to direct yourself, then I would ask your agent I would in an email specifically put the verbiage that you want sent to the casting director of what you're having issues with, and see if either you can have a conversation with them or if they can send you specific directorial information. That's probably the biggest hurdle, quite honestly, on a performance level. So I understand that being an issue. And I also want to add into that regarding commercials, what's happening is in callbacks, should it have been incorrectly if you directed it in not the direction they were thinking, but they like your performance anyway. I mean, the great thing about commercials is if they like your performance, they'll redirect you in the callback. We're doing Zoom callbacks. So it is live. And we also, just another thing which I want to mention, which is being worked on by a couple different people, we are trying to do first calls live as well. It's something we've done for years with real people casting around the country. Like if we're doing, American Airlines employees, or, so real people, and we have to pull them in from Dallas or from Chicago or from wherever. So we're familiar with doing the process. It's not new to us at all. And when this did first start, we had a SAG-AFTRA member that we called on to, and a good friend of mine, who we called on to have her run us through this to make sure it kind of all worked seamlessly with a particular program. And it did. It had its, ups and downs, and we all had to work. This was months ago. It was weeks and weeks ago. So everybody's working on it to get it tweaked properly. But I thank you for bringing that up, because that is and will always be the challenge. So I think we just all have to work on it. But commercially, CCDA has really tried to put it out there that we give more direction to the actors.
Thank you for that, and thanks for that question, Cam. And I have to say that I love the idea that you're going to also be helping with the apps. There are so many apps out there where people can utilize them. There's Prompt Smart. I just want to say this for people that will come right up on your camera as you're working. If it's a talking head, and you're wanting to be able to really be fluid, there are different things. So we will get those together for everybody to know and share it. And one of the things I just want to come to, we had talked about this earlier, but I know this is primarily about commercials, so thank you. Yeah. But for everybody who's watching, we will be doing something in terms of auditions for on camera, in terms of television as well, aside from commercials, because I know that this is not where Arlene's saying commercials are the focus, and we know that's the first place that work's really coming out. We want to make sure that everybody's prepared, so thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Zoom.
And just a reminder that the equipment itself is not different at all.
Right.
All of that is the same. Yeah.
Which is really important. And people, I want you to know, when you're saying you're trying to do everything by Zoom, members have been talking how much they love that interaction. That's what we miss in the room. So thank you for really working on that.
And that's actually what has come up before for people, because like I was saying at the front end, how maybe that's what you mean, like how difficult this is instead of being in the room. Yeah. Actors have said it's really hard, because what's so great is when they're in the room, they're getting that energy and that feedback. And so definitely.
Well, and it's helpful to get a little direction when you're on Zoom. At least, again, you're not having to do it through the email, right? We're getting that direction. Yeah. So this was regarding readers, was a question that came out. It says, worst case scenario, I need to submit an audition, which is a dialogue, but I have no reading partner, or my only available reading partner is someone of the wrong gender who cannot act. Should I read both parts myself? And I think that you kind of answered this before. They don't have to be great readers. So let's say you don't have a reader. Read both parts myself, let my partner read, however bad he or she is, or pass on the audition.
I love that question. No matter how bad they are. Yeah, it's the reader is a funny thing. And as Gabrielle was saying, as you were saying, there are apps out there, so many apps. I remember pre-COVID running into an actor who was working on a theatrical read, and there was one app he was using where he was recording himself. He was recording the whole thing, and then you delete your part so that, you know, you can be reading with yourself, but not on camera. Does that make sense?
Right.
Do you know what that, have you ever heard of that app?
I have not, I've heard somebody talk about it. I have not used it.
Yeah. So there are different reader apps that you can get. And I think there are ones that are free and they'll just keep popping up. Oh, pay the premium. You're like, no. And so as far as a reader goes, again, like I said before, you can always pre-record yourself on your computer. You can do it through an app. You can call a friend, call your lifeline, and be FaceTiming them on one thing and recording yourself on another. So there are different ways to do it, or just have a phone call with them, whatever works best. It is always good to have something as long as the reader doesn't take away from your read, as long as it doesn't hurt you, we don't care. We just don't want to hear them, especially if they're bad. I mean, I'm a really bad reader, I have to say. When they ask me to read in the room, sometimes my directors will just laugh and go, "You read it, Arlene," with them. And it's like, no, I can't do that.
I get nervous. I have to tell you, you're great. You've been great on this. So I want to ask you, do you, Kate had asked, do you always focus your sight slightly left or right of the camera lens? Would you ever deliver lines to the camera besides when it's clearly called for?
Yeah, I think that this comes down to, again, you should shoot it, see what it looks like to find out where your marking is. In the room, we put markers up everywhere, right? We're always telling you, oh, look at the corner, you know, because we're watching our framing. And that's why we're like, well, look here. And then we're like, oh, great, we love your eyes right there. So this is going to be our spot, and we tape it right there. So I would say, yes, unless it's called for to look in the camera, find that other angle. Is that angle a person walking in the room? Well, they're not over here walking in the room. You know, you've got to find what looks natural. Is the person that you're talking to that's across the table from you, where exactly should their eyes be? Again, this is a place where you get to see for the first time what our session runners that we love so much, who are doing it 72 times a day, trying to get the best auditions out of you. Now it's your chance to see. And maybe when you go in the room, you'll understand, you'll be able to navigate yourself better when they're giving you direction, because you'll understand what it means and why they're asking. It's not just a stupid reason. The other thing I want to mention, which I think might be a part of this, is if it's a two-person scene, how do you shoot that, right? Because they're not next to you. So you'll notice a lot of times when we're in the studio, we do shot reverse shots, or they do it when you're working on set. And so you just have to treat it like a shot reverse shot. And we're shooting over the shoulder of the person over there, right? We're shooting you. That's exactly what you're seeing. And so you're not at a disadvantage when you're in a two-person scene, not being in the scene with them. It's actually a little advantageous, because it's hard sometimes when we're in the room, and you know, the directors will tell us how they want us to do callbacks, and sometimes they're like, okay, let's have the two of them talking together, and or they'll tell us to do that on the first audition, and I'm just like, can we not reverse shot, because I won't be able to see them. They're going to be like this the whole time. It doesn't work for us in the studio. So anyway, again, silver lining for you guys.
I was going to say another silver lining.
Yeah.
I have here there's Amanda Schoonover wrote, I have a very high success rate of booking a job when I'm in person at the casting director's office, and a low rate of booking when self-tape. How can I own the room when I'm not in the room? I'm unsure how to get my personality to shine through when I only have 10 seconds to slate. I'm very worried that more and more casting will be done from self-tapes. I don't want to be left in the dust. Please help.
Okay, I just thought of this. I had seen that question before, and it's a great question. This is exactly what I went through today, right? Doing that whole presentation on the front end, none of you were there. Like now you're there, and I'm comfortable, and I feel like we're together, as much as we can be. And it was really hard, and I didn't have any feedback. So I think maybe a really good exercise would be, along with the 30-day challenge, create a Zoom with your friends and put just 3 or 4 people on the screen on the Zoom and do your audition that way. And these are things, quite honestly, that a lot of classes, virtual classes right now, are working on. It's that comfort level and that understanding of how to use the framing. And I know it seems silly, but it's really important, and it does transfer to the room. So it's not wasted information, but it's much more one-on-one. Obviously, the things I'm doing are very general ideas, and if they work for you, great. But if you feel like you need more help, I really feel like there are so many people out there that are giving their help these days, including, I know a lot of questions have come through and we've stayed very general with products, but including there are people who have businesses of strictly doing self-tapes. And way at the beginning, when I did the first live, I had a couple people reach out to me and with their clients that they work with, one person in particular, with her clients, she had sent them a tape at the an email at the first or second week of shelter in place, and with exactly the equipment that she was recommending them to buy. And I have no idea, I haven't looked at her site, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find her. She's a union member, and also does these self-tapes as her other profession. And she may be offering private coaching with this if it's something that really you need to be handheld with. You know what I mean? Because some people just need that and want that.
But I think also what you're suggesting, I mean, because some people might not be able to afford that right now, the idea that you practice with your friends on Zoom, these are really great. Challenge yourself to tape every day. These are exercises, warming up your body. So I think that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Another, we're almost coming to the end, and there's a million questions, I'm sorry, but one of the questions was, are casting directors, producer directors required to delete talent video once casting is terminated and talent was not cast? I don't like the idea of my video or image kept by anyone if I was not cast.
Right. So we, the casting directors, are usually required by the client or the ad agency that we remove them. We no longer have them, but they do have them because they paid for the session, and they basically own the auditions. They cannot use the auditions for anything because it's against the union rules. So you don't need to worry. And in fact, if anything, it's advantageous, because if it's a client who is not planning on doing additional casting for their next round of spots, and they want to look back at this casting session that they did, the only one that loses is us, really, because they go back, they find the people that they now want on this round from the last round of casting.
Right.
And then we just give them the agent information, and it moves forward.
And I want to add to that, just for members who are watching and have that concern, if that happens, if you ever see an audition that you've done that's been put online, you should report it to the union, and we'll be able to go and follow up for you. We've done that in the past. That is not material that's supposed to go public. It was not paid for that usage and not approved by you. So that's important. Before we go, because I know we're coming near the end, and you've been so amazing. I'm
a big talker, I'm sorry.
You're so good. No, this was stuff we need. We're going to be doing more of this again. I want everybody to know we will be looking at all the different ways that we have to audition and reach out to be seen in our work. But before we go, I wanted just to touch base real quick, Rebecca, if you had any more questions, or Cameron, and Arlene, of course.
And I wanted to just say one thing before Rebecca and Cameron. If everybody, I would love it if you would follow me on social media, follow ASG Casting. And I do have IG lives that are up there that are saved that you can absolutely look at. And there are a lot of questions that came through here have already been addressed. And I'm doing another one tomorrow with one of the directors that I work with all the time, Matt Smuckler. And so I'm hoping to get a really great interview of what's going on their end.
You're
So
great.
ASG Casting, Instagram and
Yeah,
Facebook.
lovely. All right, everybody heard that. So if you guys have quick questions for Arlene, please feel free. If not, don't worry, but Rebecca?
Yeah, Gabrielle, thank you. One of the things that has come up, and it was so touching to see the love that you have for all of us as performers, and that is a shared community, and people are really missing that right now. And I think that hits every stripe of life, but the real question comes, there are senior performers who feel more isolated and less in touch because the technological elements may or may not be harder just because you weren't an early adapter in your life. And so do you have advice specifically for senior performers who are sort of struggling in this? I know that Gabrielle has talked about the idea of doing other different things where we can have real one-on-ones in the future through the PTEOE, but do you have some advice right now for folks who are really sort of struggling with all of this being new all at once?
Yeah, it is really challenging, and my heart goes out because it's sometimes, sometimes challenging for myself as well. I think if they can find someone that they know that is younger and more adept with it, whether it be a grandchild or a relative or an actor friend or someone, they've worked with, that would be my first suggestion. And see if they can start. I always talk about it's important for actors to have their community, no matter what. We all do, right? And even when you're just coming here straight from college, you need to find your people, whether that's Groundlings or Beverly Hills Playhouse, whatever. I don't even know if that's still around, but wherever it is, you have to find your people. And I think that speaks for the older community to find younger, so that part they don't need to feel anxious about. And then also really confide or be honest with your manager or your agent with what you feel your shortcomings are in the technological end of things. My friends who are agents and managers have all been amazing with their older clients, and they've gone and done really one-on-one stuff with them over the phone. So it's not impossible and it's scary, but do it because we need you represented in commercials and in television and film during this time period. So you are an integral part. No one will expect you to have all of that equipment that probably was on the list of requirements for shooting the commercial. No one will have that expectation. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. And I think also this goes to what you said earlier as well, Rebecca, they should practice. They should practice. They should practice. We all have to practice. So it's no matter what our age, I would say that's a great piece of advice as well. And we will do some kind of webinar in the future, one-on-ones or something to help members specifically. Cameron, do you have a question?
No, I've already signed up for your Instagram. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Session and keep practicing. Practice is the only way to get good at this.
Yeah. And you know what? It's another silver lining. It's going to make the union stronger, which I feel like all the unions are going to get stronger, which I'm kind of excited about. But it's brought us all together and made us realize how important this community is and what's important about all of our jobs, and I think that, wow, if that's what we walk away with, okay, that's what we walk away with through this time.
That's great. Thank you so much. Before we go, I just want to say to everybody, please subscribe to the SAG-AFTRA channel that you're watching right now on YouTube, because we want people to be able to watch. We have a lot of different PTEOE webinars coming up, and we want people to be able to see what you've shared with. Remember to go to PTEOE@sagaftra.org. as well as Arlene's site. We want to follow you. You are amazing. You really
Thank you.
beautiful, beautiful job. We all need to stand together and help each other. And this was really, thank you, really meaningful. I'm getting texts from people right now how much they appreciate you from all over the country. You did a wonderful job. Would never know that you had been nervous, though you said that a couple of times.
Now I'm ready to go for like 2 more hours.
I know, right? I'm telling you, practice, practice, practice. Anyway.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing everybody next time. And take care of yourselves. This is a moment in time. We will be as prepared as possible. We are moving forward. Work will happen and we will be ready. So thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. And thank you, Arlene. Wonderful.
Thank you.